Why had the envelope been slipped into her hand so quietly, as if silence itself could change its weight? Captain Elena Ramirez stood among the crowd of soldiers, the late afternoon sun washing the courtyard in gold, the air full of idle chatter and boots scuffing against concrete. She could still feel the heat of the folded paper against her palm, pressed there by a man she didn't recognize. His eyes had met hers for the briefest of moments, steady, urgent, unshaking, before he walked on, disappearing into the press of uniforms as if he had never existed. Her pulse quickened. She hadn't even looked yet. She couldn't not hear. Around her, laughter broke out from a group playing cards near the steps. Someone shouted for water. The world went on as if nothing had changed, but for Elena, everything had. That paper, so thin, so fragile, carried something heavier than the rifles on their shoulders. She slipped it into her sleeve. Her fingers brushed against the coarse fabric, hiding it as if instinct alone told her it was dangerous to hold. She forced herself to breathe, to let her shoulders relax. Don't show it. Don't show them. But she couldn't shake the thought. Why her? Why not her commanding officer? Why not the intelligence team 2 blocks away? What did this stranger know about her life, that made him choose her? She carried the question with her through the evening. The mess hall was alive with noise, but the stew on her plate went cold. Her squad mate, Torres, nudged her shoulder. "You're quiet tonight. What's wrong, Ramirez?" She forced a smile, just tired. But even as she spoke, the envelope burned against her skin. Tired? No, she was terrified. Later, in the quiet of her bunk, she unfolded it. The handwriting was jagged, hurried. Letters ran together as if written in the dark with shaking hands. At first it looked like nonsense, rows of numbers and broken sentences scattered across the page. But at the bottom, one phrase pulled the air from her chest. "They're coming for everyone you love." Her throat tightened. She read it again, tracing the ink with her finger. Everyone you love. Her mother, her younger brother back home in San Antonio. Faces she carried with her into every mission, tucked behind the hardness she wore like armor. She closed her eyes. The coded strings of numbers above the phrase were deliberate. A cipher, she realized. This wasn't random. Someone wanted her to crack it. Someone believed she could. Why her? The question returned, sharper now. She wasn't intelligence. She was a soldier trained to fight, not to decode. And yet the paper was in her hands, whispering responsibility she hadn't asked for. She folded it back, slipping it inside her boot where no one would find it. Sleep didn't come. Instead, she listened to the sounds of the barracks, distant snores, the shift of blankets, the hum of fluorescent lights, and beneath it all, the steady, insistent beat of her own fear. The next morning, the base buzzed with movement. Briefings, checklists, radios crackling with orders. Outside, the desert stretched endless and pale, heat already rising off the sand. Elena moved through it all as if half present. She answered Tor's jokes with nods, saluted her captain when called, shouldered her gear when ordered. But her thoughts kept circling back to the paper hidden against her skin. At the firing range, she steadied her rifle, aiming at the target 100 meters out. Her breathing slowed, her finger brushed the trigger, and for a second everything aligned, the familiar silence of focus, the narrowing of the world to a single point. But then she saw it again. The words, "everyone you love." Her shot went wide. "Off today, Ramirez," Torres called from 2 stalls down. He grinned, teasing. "Never thought I'd see the day." She lowered the rifle, masking her unease. Guess there's a first time for everything. But inside she was unraveling. That night she sought solitude. She slipped away from the barracks, climbing the narrow staircase that led to the roof. From up there, the camp lights glowed like fragile stars against the dark. Beyond the wire fences lay nothing but desert, vast, unforgiving, eternal. She pulled the paper from her boot. The numbers stared back at her. 170345, 221911, strings and sequences. Something about them tugged at her memory. Training drills, long nights of studying maps, the way her father used to test her with puzzles when she was a girl. The world hides patterns, he'd told her once. If you can see them, you can survive anything. Her chest tightened. He died before she enlisted, never seeing her wear the uniform, but his voice lived inside her still, guiding her. And now, maybe, it was leading her toward something she couldn't ignore. She copied the numbers onto a scrap of notebook paper, trying to line them up, searching for logic. Coordinates, a date. Each attempt circled her back to the same truth. She needed help, but who could she trust? The faces of her unit came to mind, each one layered with loyalty and doubt. Tors with his jokes and reckless courage. Singh, steady and quiet, the anchor of the squad. And Captain Hayes, who demanded perfection but carried the weight of every soldier's life in his eyes. Could she share this with them? Or would it mark her as unstable, compromised? She folded it again, gripping it tight. Not yet, not until she was sure. The following days blurred together. Patrols, drills, the heat beating down on armored vehicles. Every noise, every shadow felt heavier. She caught herself studying strangers, searching for the man who had given her the envelope. But he was gone, a ghost swallowed by the crowd. And yet the message haunted her. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw her mother's face, lined with worry as she said goodbye before deployment. Her brother, waving from the porch, trying to be brave. Everyone you love. She knew she couldn't ignore it. To dismiss it was to gamble with their lives. So one night, under the dim glow of the barracks' emergency lights, she slipped the paper to Tors. He frowned, reading it. His usual grin faded. "This is serious," he muttered. "Where'd you get it?" "Does it matter?" she whispered back. "Yeah, it does. Because if this is what I think it is, we're sitting on a bomb." His eyes met hers, searching. She felt the weight of his judgment, his fear. For a moment, she wished she hadn't shared it at all. But then he sighed, handing it back. "I'll cover for you," he said quietly. "Whatever you're chasing, you're not doing it alone." Her throat tightened. Gratitude mixed with dread. She had opened the door now. There was no going back. The next day, Tors was different. Alert, guarded. He didn't speak of the note again, not in front of others. But his presence at her side was sharper, more deliberate, as if bracing for something unseen. And then, just before dawn on the fourth day, the base alarms wailed. Elena jolted from sleep, heart pounding. The sirens cut through the air, followed by the roar of engines and the thunder of boots. Orders shouted, radios crackled. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. She reached for her rifle, adrenaline flooding her veins. The note flashed in her mind. "They're coming for everyone you love." And as the first explosion shook the ground, she realized this wasn't a warning. It was a countdown. What do you do when the sound of your own heartbeat is louder than the orders screaming around you? Elena's body moved before her mind could catch up. Boots hit the floor, rifle slung, vest strapped, helmet pulled tight. The barracks shook again as a second explosion rippled through the air, rattling the thin walls. Someone shouted, "Incoming mortar fire!" And the hall turned into chaos, soldiers rushing, grabbing gear, colliding in the narrow aisles. But Elena's eyes weren't on the door. They were on her boot. Inside it, still hidden, was the folded slip of paper. The warning. She shoved the thought down, forced her legs to follow the stream of bodies pouring into the courtyard. The desert night was ablaze. Tracer rounds streaked across the sky like burning comets. The sound, deafening. Mortars thudded into the sand outside the wire, sending plumes of dirt and fire skyward. Sirens blared. Radios screamed for artillery response. "Ramirez, Tors with me," Captain Hayes's voice cut through the noise. Elena snapped into motion, following him toward the command post. Tors fell in beside her, his face tense, his usual grin replaced by something raw, human, afraid. As they ran, Elena's thoughts fractured. She saw flashes, her mother's hands wringing a dish towel at the kitchen sink, her brother's laugh echoing through the hallway, and over it all the words from the note. "They're coming for everyone you love." Not just family. Could it mean here her squad, her people? Inside the command post, officers huddled over maps lit by a trembling lantern. Radios buzzed, voices overlapping, urgent. Hayes slammed his hand on the table. "Talk to me. Where's the fire coming from?" "North perimeter," a sergeant barked. "Multiple launch points. Looks coordinated." Elena's chest tight. Coordinated, not random, not chance. She stood by the wall, gripping her rifle, her pulse pounding so loud it drowned the rest of the chatter. The note wasn't just a warning, it was a prophecy. She wanted to speak, to tell them everything, but fear sealed her throat. What if they didn't believe her? What if they thought she was compromised? Hayes turned, eyes landing on her. "Ramirez, get your unit ready. You're pushing north with Alpha Team. We cut this off before it breaches the wire." She nodded sharply. "Yes, sir." Torres caught her glance as they left the post. His eyes asked the question his mouth didn't dare. "You knew, didn't you?" She didn't answer, she couldn't. Outside, armored trucks roared to life. The squad piled in, metal slamming shut, the smell of fuel and sweat thick in the air. Elena sat wedged between Torres and Singh, gripping her rifle so tightly her knuckles whitened. The vehicle jolted forward, bouncing over uneven ground. Every breath felt stolen, borrowed against the storm outside. Singh whispered a prayer under his breath, words lost to the rumble of the engine. Torres muttered, "Just another night in paradise," but his attempt at humor fell flat. Silence pressed in around them, broken only by the rattling metal and the distant percussion of gunfire. Elena's mind returned to the paper. The numbers, coordinates, could they point here? Had she failed to see it in time? The truck screeched to a halt. The rear door dropped and the night swallowed them whole. They spilled out into the sand, rifles raised, eyes scanning the horizon. Muzzle flashes sparked in the distance, bursts of fire cutting through the darkness. "Form a line," Hayes shouted. "Push forward." Elena dropped into formation, boots sinking into soft sand. The air reeked of smoke and cordite. Her ears rang with every shot fired. She pressed her cheek to the rifle, sighting downrange, her training taking over where thought could not. Target, breathe, squeeze. But every time she blinked, she saw the note. The firefight raged. Bullets snapped past, close enough to hear their cruel whistle. Sand erupted around her boots. Torres shouted something she couldn't hear, his voice torn away by the storm of gunfire. Then silence, not total but sudden. The shooting eased, then stopped. The desert stretched out in eerie stillness, broken only by the crackling of burning debris. Hayes raised a fist, the line halted, his eyes narrowed, scanning the horizon. "Why they stop?" he muttered. Elena's chest sank, because it wasn't the real attack. It was a test. She thought of the numbers again. 170345, 221911. Could those be times, coordinates, a sequence of moves? Her stomach turned. If she was right, then this was only the beginning. As they advanced cautiously, Elena spotted something half buried in the sand. A metal case scorched at the edges. She knelt, brushing grit away with trembling fingers. Inside, broken wires, charred circuits, a launcher, abandoned deliberately. Her breath caught, a decoy. She opened her mouth to warn Hayes, but the ground beneath them erupted. The blast threw her back, sand swallowing her vision. Her ears screamed with ringing silence. She hit the ground hard, the impact knocking the air from her lungs. Dust choked her throat. She coughed, blinking until shapes emerged through the haze. Torres lay sprawled a few feet away, blood trickling from his temple. He groaned, trying to push himself up. Singh clutched his leg, red blooming beneath his fingers. Shouts echoed, frantic, disoriented. Elena forced herself up, every muscle burning. Around them, shadows moved in the darkness. Not just fighters, they were close, too close. Hayes roared orders, rallying the line. Gunfire erupted again, sharp and chaotic. Elena raised her rifle, but her vision blurred, not from injury, from realization. The note, the numbers, it wasn't just coordinates. It was a sequence of planned strikes. This ambush, this chaos, it was mapped out long before tonight. Her breath came in ragged bursts. She wanted to scream the truth, but bullets ripped through the air, drowning her voice. She fired, each shot mechanical, automatic, but her mind was elsewhere, racing ahead. If she could solve the sequence, she might know where they'd hit next. But what if she could? What if she was too late? The firefight dragged on, seconds stretching into eternity. The squad pushed, pulled, staggered through smoke and fire until at last the shadows faded, retreating into the night. Silence fell heavy. The desert was littered with debris, casings glinting like scattered stars in the sand. Medics rushed in, tending to the wounded. Tors sat up slowly, blood drying on his face. Singh winced as they wrapped his leg, pain etched across his usually stoic features. Elena lowered her rifle, chest heaving. Her eyes burned not from smoke, but from the weight pressing down on her. She could stay silent. She could bury the note, pretend she never saw it. No one would blame her. But the images returned, her mother, her brother, Tors bleeding beside her, Singh crying out in pain, "Everyone you love." She reached into her boot, pulling the folded slip from its hiding place. Her hands trembled as she walked toward Hayes. He stood with his back to her, shoulders rigid, staring into the dark horizon as if it might answer him. "Sir," she said, her voice rough. He turned, his eyes locked on the paper in her hand. "What's that?" Her mouth went dry, she swallowed hard. "A warning, I think they knew this was coming." The silence between them stretched long, taut. Hayes's jaw tightened. His gaze shifted from the paper to her face, searching. "Where did you get this?" Elena hesitated. The memory of the stranger's eyes flashed through her mind. Steady, urgent, gone. "Someone slipped it to me," she admitted. "I don't know who, but the numbers, sir, they line up. Tonight wasn't random, it was planned. And this might tell us what's next." Hayes's expression hardened, unreadable. He took the paper from her, unfolding it with careful fingers. His eyes scanned the jagged writing, the numbers, the warning at the bottom. For a long time he said nothing. Finally, he folded it again, slipping it into his pocket. "You should have brought this to me sooner," he said, his tone low, clipped. "But you're right, this isn't over." Elena's chest ached. She wanted relief, but it didn't come. The truth was out now, but so was her burden. Hayes glanced back toward the horizon, where the last traces of smoke drifted into the night. "Get some rest, Ramirez," he said. "Tomorrow we dig deeper." Rest? The word felt hollow. She knew sleep wouldn't come. Not with the weight of the coded message pressing on her chest, not with the unanswered questions gnawing at her mind. Who had given it to her? Why her? And how much time did they really have before the next strike? As she walked back toward the barracks, the stars above shimmered cold and indifferent. She thought of her father's words again. Patterns mean survival. And she promised herself she would see the pattern no matter the cost, even if it meant losing herself in the process. Why was she suddenly the one everyone was watching? Morning light bled across the camp, pale and unforgiving, revealing the damage of the night before. Vehicles blackened by fire, sand cratered by mortars, soldiers moving with slower steps, shoulders heavy from exhaustion and loss. Elena felt every glance as she walked through the courtyard. They lingered a little too long, slid away a little too late. Whispers floated behind her, carried on the dry wind. She wasn't paranoid, she knew why. Captain Hayes had called her into his office just before dawn. No pleasantries, no coffee steaming on the desk. Just him, his piercing eyes, and the folded slip of paper laid flat between them. "You're certain this wasn't fabricated?" he'd asked. "Yes, sir." "You understand the gravity of what this implies?" Her throat had gone dry. "I do." He'd leaned back, studying her with a silence sharper than any blade. Then, "Intelligence is taking over. Until they verify this, you're not to breathe a word of it to anyone. Understood?" She nodded, but the truth was already out. Tors knew, Singh suspected, and soldiers could smell secrets like wolves scenting blood. Now, as she crossed the courtyard toward the mess hall, Tors caught up beside her. His grin was back but faint, painted over fatigue. "You handed it in, didn't you?" he murmured, low enough no one else could hear. She kept her gaze forward. "I had to." "Yeah," he sighed. "I figured, just watch your back, Ramirez, stuff like this. It sticks to people." She wanted to ask what he meant, but the tightness in his voice told her he didn't need to explain. In the military, rumors traveled faster than bullets. Being different, being singled out, even for something like a warning, was dangerous in its own way. The mess hall was quieter than usual, the clatter of trays dulled by the weight of last night. Elena pushed food around her plate, appetite lost. Singh sat across from her, his leg bandaged but his posture rigid, upright. He studied her without speaking. Finally, he said, "You saw it coming." The words hit like a stone, dropped in water. "No," she answered too quickly, "I didn't." His eyes stayed on her, calm, unblinking. "You did." She gripped her fork tighter. The silence between them stretched until Tors broke it with a forced laugh. "Come on, Singh. If she had some kind of crystal ball, we'd all be rich by now." But Singh didn't smile. His gaze shifted back to his tray, though his words lingered heavy in Elena's chest. Later that day, the summons came. Two men in plain fatigues, no unit patches, no names on their uniforms. Intelligence officers. Their presence alone sent a chill through her. "Captain Ramirez," one said, though she wasn't a captain, just a staff sergeant. The mistake was deliberate, a subtle reminder that in their world names and ranks could bend. "You'll come with us." They led her to a small, windowless room near the edge of camp. A single table, two chairs, a recorder blinking red in the corner. The door shut with a metallic click that echoed in her chest. "Sit." She obeyed. The older officer set the folded note on the table. He didn't touch it, just stared at her. "Where did this come from?" She told the story again, the stranger, the way it was slipped into her hand, the urgency in his eyes. She kept her voice steady, her answers precise, but inside her pulse raced. The younger officer leaned forward. "Describe him." She tried, height, build, features blurred by the press of the crowd. "I only saw his eyes clearly, dark, focused, like," she faltered, searching for the word, "like he needed me to listen." The room went still. The older officer tapped the paper once, a sharp sound. "Why you?" She swallowed hard. "I don't know." But she did know, or at least she had a guess. Something about her father's puzzles, her ability to find patterns where others saw noise. She hadn't told them that. She wasn't sure she ever could. They questioned her for an hour, circling the same ground, prodding for cracks. When they finally dismissed her, she stepped into the sunlight, blinking, disoriented, as if she'd surfaced from underwater. Tors was waiting. He studied her face, then shook his head. "You look like you just wrestled with ghosts." She almost laughed, almost. That night, unable to sleep, Elena returned to the roof. The desert stretched endless before her, the stars bright and cold. She pulled out her notebook, scribbling the numbers again. She'd memorized them by now, but copying them helped her think. 170345, 221911. She tried aligning them with dates. March 17, 1945. A battle, a codebook entry. Nothing fit. Coordinates. Some numbers lined up, others didn't. She felt like she was standing in front of a locked door with 1,000 keys that didn't fit. Frustration clawed at her. She slammed the notebook shut, pressing her palms against her eyes. What if she was wrong? What if this was nothing, just a cruel trick? And yet the explosions, the ambush, the decoys, they were real. Someone had planned them, someone knew. Her father's voice returned, calm, patient. "Don't look at the surface. Look at the space between." She opened the notebook again, staring at the sequences. Between. Not the numbers themselves, but the gaps. Her breath caught. 17 to 3. A difference of 14, 3 to 45. A difference of 42, 22 to 19. Difference of 319 to 11. Difference of 8. She scribbled quickly, her heart pounding. 144238. What did it mean? A pattern or another dead end? She didn't know, but for the first time she felt a spark, like a match struck in darkness. The next morning, before she could share it with anyone, orders came down. Another patrol. North Sector. Hayes gathered them, his voice rough from lack of sleep. We're moving out. Intel suspects the fighters regrouped near the ridge. We clear it, fast and clean. Elena's chest tightened. Fast and clean. Nothing about this war was either. As they geared up, Tors leaned close. What's eating you now? She hesitated, then whispered, I think the numbers are about timing. His brows furrowed. Timing. Intervals, steps, something's building. He opened his mouth, but Hayes's command cut him off. Load up. The trucks rumbled forward, sand kicking up in their wake. Elena sat rigid, her notebook pressed against her thigh under her vest. The numbers screamed at her, begging to be solved. At the ridge, the squad dismounted. The sun was merciless, heat waves distorting the horizon. They spread out, scanning the rocks, rifles raised. Minutes dragged, nothing, just silence heavy and expectant. And then movement, a figure darting between rocks, then another, shadows multiplying. Contact, someone shouted. Gunfire exploded. Elena dropped to the ground, returning fire, adrenaline burning through her veins. But beneath the chaos, beneath the roar, her mind clung to the numbers. 144238. What if these weren't just intervals? What if they were warnings, steps in a sequence leading to something bigger? A mortar screamed overhead, slamming into the ridge behind them. The blast shook the ground, dust filling the air. Elena coughed, eyes stinging, ears ringing. Tors grabbed her arm, dragging her behind cover. Stay with me, he yelled. She nodded, though her mind was already elsewhere. Because in the split second of silence after the explosion, she saw it, etched faintly into the rock where the blast had scarred the surface. A symbol, a mark. Not random, deliberate. Her stomach dropped. Whoever sent that note, they weren't just warning her, they were guiding her. She fired back blindly, heart racing. Questions tore at her mind. Who was he? How did he know her? And most terrifying of all, what was he leading her toward? As the firefight raged, she realized one thing with chilling certainty. The numbers weren't the end of the message. They were only the beginning. Why did her commander's silence feel more dangerous than gunfire? The firefight at the ridge ended in smoke and exhaustion. Bodies lay scattered, some enemy, some not. Medics worked fast, voices clipped, hands bloody. The squad regrouped near the vehicles, but Hayes's gaze was fixed on Elena. He hadn't said her name, hadn't given her a single order. He just watched, as if she were another piece of intelligence he hadn't decided how to use or discard. On the ride back, Tors sat pressed against her, his knee bouncing. He leaned close. You need to tell me what you're seeing. Don't shut me out. Her throat tightened. She wanted to. God, she wanted to, but every word carried weight now, every secret a blade that could cut her or save her. Later, she whispered. Back at camp, Hayes called her into his office. The note lay unfolded on his desk, a scar of ink and paper. Beside it sat one of the intelligence officers, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Close the door, Hayes said. Elena obeyed. Hayes gestured to the chair opposite him. Sit. She did, back straight, hands clasped on her knees. Her pulse hammered in her ears. The intelligence officer leaned forward. We cross-referenced the numbers. Nothing clean. No coordinates that make sense. No cipher we recognize. Care to explain why you think this is anything more than enemy propaganda? Elena met his eyes. Because last night's attack was staged exactly the way the note implied. The decoy launchers, the timing, the retreat, it wasn't random. It was orchestrated. The officer's lips pressed thin. That's circumstantial. Her chest tightened. She wanted to slam her fists against the table to scream that she knew. Instead, she took a breath. "Sir, I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm asking you to let me prove it." Hayes studied her in silence, his eyes sharp, cutting through her like glass. Finally, he spoke. "You're walking a thin line, Ramirez. If this is disinformation and you're being used, you endanger everyone here." "I understand." "Do you?" His tone was soft, dangerous. "Because right now, some in this camp already think you do." The words landed heavy. She felt the stares, the whispers. Soldiers didn't need evidence, they just needed suspicion. Hayes leaned back. "You'll stay on patrols, you'll do your job, but you'll also work with intel. If there's a pattern, you find it. If not—" He let the silence finish the sentence. Elena left the office with the paper burning in her pocket again. Torres was waiting outside, leaning against the wall. "Well," he asked. She shook her head. "They don't trust me." He gave a humorless laugh. "You're surprised." Her jaw clenched. "No." That night she sat alone with the numbers again. 144238. Her father's voice haunted her. Look at the space between. She thought about music, pauses between notes making rhythm. About chess, the moves not played shaping the board. What if the numbers weren't destinations, but beats in a larger sequence? Steps of a plan unfolding piece by piece. She pulled her notebook closer, sketching maps, dates, troop movements. Her eyes burned with fatigue, but she couldn't stop. Every dead end pushed her harder. A soft knock startled her. She shoved the notebook shut as Torres slipped in. "You look like hell," he said gently. "Thanks." He sat across from her, resting his elbows on his knees. "You know, when we signed up, I didn't picture this. Codes, secrets, shadows." His voice dropped. "I pictured fighting, defending, not wondering if the person next to me is about to break." Elena's chest ached. She wanted to tell him everything, about her father, about the puzzle that felt stitched into her bones. But she only said, "I can't let this go, not when it's tied to them." "Them." "My family." Her voice cracked on the word. Torres was quiet for a long time. Finally, he nodded. "Then I'm with you, even if I don't understand it." She exhaled, a tremor of relief threading through her exhaustion. The next day the camp was restless. Intel briefings ran long, patrols doubled. Rumors swirled, another attack was coming, bigger than the last. No one knew when, only that it was close. During downtime, Elena watched Singh cleaning his weapon, his movements methodical despite the pain in his bandaged leg. She asked quietly, "You ever wonder what home would be like if you just didn't come back?" He looked up, his dark eyes steady. "Every day." The honesty startled her. He continued, "But I also know this. If my death means one less family gets the knock at their door, then it's worth it." His words cut deep, settling heavy in her chest. She thought of her brother's laugh, her mother's tired smile. Could she carry that same acceptance? That night, the alarms blared again. Elena was already half-dressed, her rifle within reach. The camp erupted, boots pounding, orders shouted. But this time the attacks came from two directions at once, south and east. Chaos, confusion, soldiers scrambling to respond. Hayes barked orders into the radio, his voice strained. Elena's squad was deployed east, racing through the dark toward the sound of gunfire. The desert lit with tracer fire. Explosions thundered across the sand. Elena fired until her shoulder ached, until her ears rang with the percussion of war. But beneath it all, her mind was racing. 144238. She counted seconds between mortar impacts. 144238. Her heart pounded as realization struck. The numbers weren't coordinates. They were timing intervals, the rhythm of the attacks. She grabbed Torres, shouting over the roar. "It's the pattern. They're timing every strike." He blinked at her, sweat streaking his face. "You're sure?" "Yes." He didn't argue, he just nodded. "Then tell Hayes before it's too late." She sprinted through the chaos, weaving between cover, bullets snapping past. Hayes was near the command truck, shouting orders. She skidded to a stop, grabbing his arm. "Sir, it's the timing. They're using intervals to coordinate strikes. 4 phases. We're only in the 3rd. His eyes locked on hers, sharp and fierce. "How do you know?" "Because I've been counting." For a heartbeat, silence hung. Then Hayes snapped to the radio operator. "Prepare west defenses now." The operator hesitated. "Sir, we don't have confirmation." "Do it," Hayes roared. And then, right on cue, the west perimeter lit up with fire. Mortars slamming, vehicles exploding, screams cutting through the night. Elena's stomach dropped. She hadn't been wrong. Hayes turned back to her, expression unreadable. "You just bought us minutes we didn't have." Minutes, that was all it was. Enough to shift defenses, enough to save some lives, but not all, never all. The battle dragged into dawn, the sky bruised with smoke and fire. By the time it ended, the camp was scarred. Bodies carried out, faces hollowed by exhaustion and grief. Elena sat on the sand, helmet off, hair damp with sweat. Her hands shook as she stared at them, coated in dust, blood, ash. Tors dropped beside her, his own face pale. He didn't speak for a while, then softly, "You were right." The words didn't feel like victory. They felt like a sentence. Because being right meant she now carried proof. Proof that the message was real, the enemy's plan deliberate, and that whoever had slipped her that note had known everything in advance. And if they knew that much, what else did they know about her? As the sun rose, Elena closed her eyes. The warmth on her face felt like judgment. And she understood, this wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about finding the truth. No matter how much it cost her. What if the person watching her closest wasn't the enemy, but her own commander? The morning after the siege, Elena was summoned again. Not to Hayes's office this time, but deeper to the makeshift intel bunker. It smelled of stale coffee, sweat, and the metallic bite of overworked machines. Screens flickered in the dim light, maps stretched across walls, lines of red thread pinned between photos like veins in a wounded body. The officer from before, Sharp, she'd learned his name, was waited with his arms folded. Hayes stood beside him, silent. "This isn't optional anymore," Sharp said. "You're embedded with us. Every hour, every thought, every theory, you share it. No secrets." Elena nodded once. Inside, something coiled tight. She didn't mind the work. She minded the watching. For days, she lived in that bunker. Hours spent combing intercepted signals, radio chatter, old attack reports. The numbers still burned in her pocket, memorized like scripture. 1440-238. But the more she stared, the more it shifted. It wasn't just intervals anymore. It was spacing on a map, echoes of routes. Each number wasn't only about time, it was also distance. Her father's voice again, unshakable. "Between the marks, you find the truth." One evening, Tors sneaked in with a thermos. "You're starving yourself," he said, setting it down. "I'm fine." "You're not." His tone was stubborn. He sat, ignoring Sharp's glare from across the room. "When you first came to the unit, remember what I said, that you looked like someone carrying 2 packs instead of 1. Elena paused, hands resting on her notes. "I remember." "Well, you're about to collapse under it. Whatever this code is, it's not just yours to solve. Stop shutting me out." Her throat tightened. He didn't know how right he was. She wanted to tell him about her father, about how this puzzle had the shape of his mind, his methods. But saying it aloud meant dragging her family into this war, and she couldn't. Not yet. So she only whispered, "I can't let it go." Tors reached across, squeezing her hand. "Then just don't carry it alone." For a fleeting second, warmth cut through the cold. The next morning, new intelligence arrived. A captured radio. Its battery half dead, its memory still holding fragments of transmission. Elena combed through the static, her ears tuned like a musician searching for rhythm. And then she froze. 4 bursts, 4 pauses, the same pattern, 1442-38. She ripped off her headphones. "It's them," she whispered. Sharp leaned in. "Say that again." "It's the same cadence. They're embedding timing into their comms, not words, just beats." Hayes's jaw flexed, "Which means they're not done." Elena's hands shook. She replayed the audio, heart racing, but something else nagged at her. The tone between bursts, it was faint, almost buried, a subtle shift like a chord change, not random, deliberate. She scribbled it out. F, D, G, C chords her father had taught her on a battered guitar. No one else in the room understood what they were staring at, but Elena did. This wasn't just military code, it was personal. Her stomach dropped. Had someone out there known about him, about her? That night she couldn't sleep. She sat outside the barracks, the desert stretching black and endless, the stars sharp as glass. Tors joined her silently, settling beside her in the sand. "Every time we make it through, I wonder what's left of us on the other side," he said quietly. "Like pieces keep getting chipped away, and one day maybe there's nothing left." Elena hugged her knees. The cool air bit her skin. "Maybe that's the point," she said, voice barely a breath. "You leave pieces behind so others don't have to." He glanced at her. "And what about you? What's left for you?" She didn't answer, couldn't. Because deep inside, she feared the truth. What was left of her was already tangled in this code. Days bled together. Intel briefings, sleepless nights, more attacks narrowly deflected because Elena could anticipate the rhythm. Soldiers began to notice. Whispers spread, not just suspicion anymore, but something sharper. Respect, fear, both. But with every narrow victory, her unease grew. Because whoever had slipped her that note hadn't just known enemy plans. They'd known how she would read them. One evening, Sharp cornered her after a long session. "You ever think maybe you're not deciphering the enemy?" His voice was low, almost conspiratorial. "Maybe you're doing exactly what they wanted." The word struck deep. What if he was right? What if by following the pattern, she was moving in the palm of someone else's hand? That night she dreamed of her father's study, papers everywhere, maps, books. His hand guiding hers across a chessboard. Every move you make is a story. The question is, whose story are you telling? She woke in sweat, heart pounding. The desert wind rattling the tent like whispered warning. The next day, patrol reports came in. Villages struck. Civilians displaced. Every attack aligned with the sequence she'd mapped. But one location stood out. A small village near the border, unremarkable, off most maps, but she knew it. She knew it from her father's stories. His unit had once operated there. He'd written its name in the margins of his journal. And now it was next in the sequence. Her blood ran cold. Hayes demanded an analysis by dusk. Sharp pressed her hard, but Elena said nothing about the personal connection. She hid it, burying it deep. Because if she revealed it, they'd know. They'd know her father was tied to all this. And then suspicion wouldn't just hover over her, it would crush her. Tors caught her outside later. "You're hiding something." She stared at him, throat dry. He stepped closer, voice low. "If you don't tell me, I can't protect you." Her chest ached. She wanted to collapse into him, to spill every secret. But the fear was stronger. The fear that if she let go, she'd condemn not just herself, but the memory of the man who'd raised her. So she whispered, "Trust me, please." He searched her face, eyes dark with worry, but he didn't press. He just nodded once, tight and sharp. As night fell, Elena stared at her notes, the numbers, the map. And for the first time, she realized she wasn't just chasing the enemy's plan. She was chasing her father's shadow. And whoever had slipped her that note, they weren't only telling her about the future. They were telling her about herself. The question was, why? Why did the map feel like it was pointing not to the enemy, but to her? The briefing room was crowded, air thick with sweat and tension. Soldiers leaned over maps. Intel officers whispered sharp exchanges. The latest attacks had carved scars across 3 provinces, each one following the sequence Elena had tracked. On the wall, red pins marked locations like open wounds, and there at the edge stood the next one, a village so small most didn't know it existed, but Elena did. Hayes's voice cut through the noise. "We move before they do. We lock it down. If they want to hit it, they'll have to go through us." His eyes slid toward Elena for a fraction of a second, not long enough for anyone else to notice, but she felt it like a knife. Intel Officer Sharp spoke next, his tone clinical. "Patterns hold. 4 beats. We're in the final phase. If we intercept here, we end this sequence. Maybe the whole operation." Murmurs spread. "End it." Everyone wanted to believe. Hayes raised a hand. "We'll send a forward unit tonight. Recon only. No engagement until I give the word." Tors leaned close to Elena as soldiers filed out. "You know something. I can see it on your face." Her pulse quickened. She kept her eyes on the map. "I know it's next, that's all." "That's not all," he pressed. "Elena, what aren't you telling me?" She forced herself to move, to gather her notes, to slip away before his questions pinned her harder than Hayes's gaze. That night she lay awake on her cot, staring at the canvas ceiling. The hum of generators outside, the faint buzz of radios, the restless movements of soldiers trying and failing to sleep, each sound pressed against her skull. In her pocket she still carried the note, folded soft now from being handled too much, the edges frayed. She pulled it out, stared at the faded ink. 4 numbers, 4 beats, a message that had been meant for her and only her. But from who? And why lead her back here? Back to the place her father had once circled in his journals, a place he'd never spoken about but never erased either. Her chest tightened. Was this fate or a trap? At dawn, the recon convoy rolled out. Dust rose behind the vehicles, the desert swallowing them. Elena sat in the back, Tors beside her, Sing across, his legs still stiff but his rifle ready. None spoke. The silence wasn't unity, it was weight. Hours later, they reached the outskirts of the village. Mud walls, narrow alleys, goats wandering without fear. Children peeked from doorways, eyes wide, faces smudged with dust. At first glance it was ordinary, quiet, too quiet. Hayes gave the order, hold perimeter, sweep slow, no mistakes. Elena moved with Tors down a narrow lane. The air smelled of earth and smoke, the kind of smoke that clung not from fire but from years of cooking fires, woven into the bones of the place. An old man sat in the shade, watching them with unreadable eyes. He muttered something in a tongue Elena didn't know. But the tone, resentment, exhaustion, needed no translation. Tors shifted uneasily. "They don't want us here." "No one ever does," Elena murmured. As they searched, she couldn't stop her pulse from hammering. Every corner, every shadow felt like memory reaching for her. She didn't belong here, yet she did. Inside one house, abandoned, she found something that made her freeze. A torn notebook page on the floor, numbers scrawled across it, the same hand as the note. Her throat closed. She stuffed it quickly into her vest before Tors could see. Her hands trembled as she rejoined the patrol. Whoever had sent the first note had been here, recently, watching, waiting. Back at camp that evening, reports poured in. The village wasn't empty, signs of movement in the hills, supplies hidden in abandoned wells. It was clear the enemy would come. Intel swarmed over the data. Sharp cornered Elena again. "You're seeing connections no one else does. Why? What are you not telling me?" She stared back, jaw set. "Because I look where you don't." He narrowed his eyes. "Or because you already know." The implication landed heavy. That night Tors found her sitting outside alone again, the desert wind cutting sharp against the silence. He crouched in front of her, searching her face. "Elena, I've had your back since the first day, but you're holding something, and if you don't tell me now, you're going to lose me too." Her chest ached. She wanted to tell him everything, about her father, about the journal, about how the numbers weren't just enemy code, they were breadcrumbs tied to her blood. But the words stuck in her throat. If she told him, she risked everything, his trust, her standing, even her father's memory. So instead she whispered, "You'll have to trust that I'm not the enemy." His jaw tightened. "I want to, God, I want to, but trust isn't blind, Elena, not here, not anymore." He walked away, leaving her alone with the wind. The next day Hayes called her in, just him, no Sharp, no intel shadows. He closed the tent flap, leaned against his desk, arms folded. "You think I don't see it," he said quietly. "The way you flinch when certain places come up, the way you dodge questions. I've led too many soldiers to miss that kind of tell." Elena's mouth went dry. Hayes stepped closer, voice lowering. "Whatever's tying you to this, it's going to come out. The only choice you have is whether it's on your terms or ours." Her pulse roared in her ears. She wanted to confess, to spill everything before the weight crushed her, but fear sealed her lips. So she said nothing. Hayes studied her a long moment, then nodded once. "You'll be on the front line when it happens. Maybe then we'll both get our answers." When the alarm came 2 nights later, Elena wasn't surprised. The hills lit up with fire. Gunshots cracked through the night. Mortars slammed into the desert floor, sending tremors through her bones. The village was under siege. Elena took her position with Tors and Sing, heart hammering, rifle tight in her hands. Through the chaos she heard it, the rhythm. 4 bursts, 4 pauses, the same sequence again. But this time, it didn't sound like an attack. It sounded like a message. For her. And as tracers tore the sky open, Elena realized the truth. Whoever had set this in motion wasn't just orchestrating battle. They were calling her home. Why did the rhythm of war sound like her father's voice? The night was alive with fire. The hills blazed, tracers cutting jagged lines across the black sky. Mortars hammered the earth, shaking the bones of the village. Screams, commands, the thunder of boots in narrow alleys, chaos pressed in from every side. Elena crouched behind a crumbling wall, rifle pressed to her shoulder, Tors firing beside her, Sing gritting his teeth as he reloaded with one hand. But she wasn't listening to the battle. She was listening to the beats, 4 bursts, 4 pauses, the same sequence she'd been chasing for weeks. Only this time it wasn't just the enemy's cadence. It was layered. Hidden within the rhythm, faint but deliberate, was a counter-sequence, a reply. Her stomach twisted. Someone wasn't just orchestrating this fight, they were speaking to her. "Ramirez," Hayes's voice cut through the radio. "Report." She pressed the comm. "Holding east flank, enemy numbers heavy, there," her words caught. How could she explain what she was hearing? "They're what?" Hayes barked. She swallowed hard, coordinated. Static crackled back, followed by Hayes's clipped reply. "Stay alive. That's an order." She leaned against the wall, heart hammering. Her father's journal burned in her memory, the circled village, the cryptic notes about operations never discussed, never admitted. And now the enemy was here, fighting in a rhythm that felt carved from his mind. Tors grabbed her shoulder, eyes sharp. "You hear it again, don't you?" Her breath caught, she didn't deny it. He cursed under his breath. "Elena, if you don't tell me what this is, I can't follow you anymore. I can't." She stared at him, torn open. For weeks she'd carried the weight alone, terrified of what it would mean. But now, with fire raining down and the village collapsing, silence felt worse than the truth. So she whispered, "This place, my father was here, years ago before I enlisted. He left notes about it, about a sequence. I think," her throat tightened, "I think he's tied to all of this." Tor's eyes widened, shock, fear, and something sharper. "You're telling me this now?" "I didn't know how." A mortar slammed nearby, cutting her words off. Dust choked the air, the wall shuddering. Sing groaned, clutching his shoulder where shrapnel tore skin. Tors dragged him back, cursing before turning on her again. His voice was raw. "If Hayes even suspects this, you're finished. You understand, they'll see you as compromised, as the enemy." Her chest ached. "I know." He stared at her, torn between loyalty and survival. Finally, he hissed, "Then don't give them a reason. Not one. Whatever this is, you bury it, or it buries you." Before she could answer, the east flank erupted. Dozens of fighters surged from the darkness, rifles blazing. Elena raised her weapon, firing until the barrel burned hot, until her shoulder ached with recoil. Tors covered Singh, laying down bursts that tore the night apart. The battle stretched on, minutes bleeding like hours. And then, as the smoke thinned, she saw him. Across the chaos, silhouetted in firelight, a figure stood on the ridge. Older, broad-shouldered, not in uniform, his posture was unmistakable. Her heart stopped. It was her father. No, it couldn't be. He was gone. Years gone. She buried him in her mind, buried him under silence and folded flags. But the way he stood, the tilt of his head, the weight in his stance, it was him, or someone who wanted her to believe it was. The figure raised a hand, 2 fingers tapping against his chest. 4 beats, 4 pauses. Her knees nearly buckled. "Elena," Tors shouted, dragging her back into cover as bullets sparked against stone. "What the hell are you doing?" She gasped, words broken. He's here." Tors shook her hard. "You're seeing ghosts, focus." But when she risked another glance, the figure was gone. Smoke, fire, nothing else. Her mind spun, collapsing under the weight of doubt. Was it him? Or a trick? Was she unraveling under the code, seeing patterns where there were none? The fight raged until dawn, until the last of the enemy melted into the hills. The village lay shattered, walls collapsed, fires smoldering, families huddled in silence. Back at camp, Hayes's gaze locked on her. Hard, unyielding. "You froze," he said flatly. Her stomach nodded. "Sir." "You froze and Tors had to pull you back. Want to explain why?" She forced her face still, her voice steady. "I thought I saw their commander just for a second." Hayes studied her, eyes narrowing. "Did you?" The silence stretched like a blade between them. Finally, she shook her head. "No, it was smoke." Hayes didn't reply. He didn't need to. His silence was worse than accusation. Later, Tors cornered her again. His voice was low, urgent. "If you keep this up, they'll burn you. Hayes, intel, everyone. They're already waiting for you to slip." Her hands trembled. "I can't stop Tors if he's out there, if it's really him." "Then what?" His voice cracked. "What if your father is the man you thought he was? What if he's the reason all this is happening?" The words cut deep, raw. She turned away, blinking hard against tears. "Then I have to know." He exhaled sharply, the sound broken. "Then you're going to get us all killed." For the first time, she couldn't promise he was wrong. That night, alone in her tent, she unfolded the original note again, ran her fingers over the faded ink. Her father's handwriting, she saw it now. She knew it in her bones. He hadn't just been part of this. He had started it. And now, through fire and blood, he was calling her back. The desert held its breath. No mortars, no rifles, just silence stretching across the broken village like a wound too deep to close. Soldiers moved quietly among the ruins, tending the wounded, stacking empty magazines, whispering to each other like priests after a funeral. But Elena Ramirez was not among them. She walked alone, deeper into the hills, her boots crunching against dry stone. The sequence still pulsed in her head, 4 beats, 4 pauses, pulling her forward like a compass that cared nothing for survival. Her rifle hung at her side, heavy but forgotten. Tonight wasn't about weapons. Tonight was about truth. The ridge rose before her, jagged against a pale moon. She climbed, each step slower than the last, until she reached the plateau. And there he was. Older, hardened, his beard streaked with gray, eyes hollow but sharp. Not a ghost, not a hallucination, flesh and blood. Her father, Elena. His voice was low, almost gentle. The same voice that once read her bedtime stories, that once told her the world was cruel but survivable. Her throat closed, the name felt like a blade. How? He didn't move, didn't flinch. The world doesn't bury soldiers, Elena, it just recycles them. They told you I died for honor, but honor doesn't pay for wars. I wasn't theirs anymore. I became something else. Her breath shook. The code, the sequence, that's you. A slow nod. It was always me. Years ago we discovered a pattern, a way to predict, to control. The military wanted it weaponized. I wanted it perfected. When they shut the program down, I took it with me. Elena's heart pounded. You started this war. He didn't deny it. His silence was answer enough. Rage flared through her chest. Do you know how many people have died because of you? Yes. His tone didn't waver. And do you know how many will live because of me? This isn't chaos, Elena. This is design. I can end the cycle, but only if the code survives. Her hands trembled against the rifle. End the cycle, you're fueling it. He stepped closer, eyes burning. No, I'm rewriting it. The governments you serve, the commanders you bleed for, they don't want peace. They want control. I've seen it. You have too. Deep down, you know I'm right. She shook her head violently, fighting the pull of his words. You're not right, you're broken. You abandoned us. His voice cracked, sharp as shattered glass. I didn't abandon you. I saved you. I left you out of this so you wouldn't be hunted like I was, but you found me anyway. For a heartbeat, the silence between them was unbearable. The daughter who worshipped him, the soldier who despised him, both colliding in her chest until she could barely breathe. Finally, he extended his hand, not as a commander, not as an enemy, as a father. Come with me, Elena. You understand the rhythm. You feel it, don't you? The others hear noise. You hear meaning. You're my blood. You can finish what I started. Her knees threatened to buckle. Part of her wanted to step forward, to give in, to finally have the answers, the belonging, the father she thought she lost. But another part, the Marine, the soldier, the woman forged in fire, saw only betrayal. She raised her rifle. His eyes flickered, not with fear but sorrow. If you pull that trigger, you'll be killing the only person who truly knows you. Tears blurred her vision. No, she whispered. I'll be killing the man who taught me how not to become you. For a moment, neither moved. The desert itself seemed to pause. Then a shadow shifted behind her. Tor's breathless, weapon trained on her father. His voice was urgent, desperate. Elena stepped back. She froze, torn between two worlds. Her father's gaze hardened, defiance rising. They'll never let you live with this truth, Elena. If you walk away, you'll always be their pawn. Tor shouted again. Ramirez, don't listen, this ends tonight. Her chest ached as though it might collapse. Duty screamed one way, blood another. And then she realized the choice wasn't between father and country. It was between repeating the cycle and breaking it. Slowly she lowered her rifle, not in surrender, in decision. Her father's face softened with relief until he saw where she aimed next. At the ground, at the transmitter strapped to his pack, pulsing faintly with the sequence's code. She fired. The device shattered, sparks exploding into the night. The rhythm cut off, severed like a lifeline. Her father staggered back, shock ripping through his features. No. It ends with me, she said, her voice breaking. For the first time, he looked old, defeated, like a man finally stripped of the myth he built around himself. Tors moved in, weapon steady, but Elena didn't watch. She turned away, tears hot against her cheeks, the weight of her choice pressing heavier than any battle. Behind her, her father's voice carried one last time. Not angry, not pleading, just broken. You were supposed to be better than me. She whispered, too quiet for anyone to hear. I am. The dawn broke over the ridge, washing the desert in pale light. Soldiers would count bodies. Commanders would argue strategy. history would bury names. But Elena Ramirez walked down alone, carrying no glory, no triumph, only the unbearable silence of someone who chose to kill the past so the future might breathe. And in that silence, the rhythm finally stopped.